The Princess and the Pauper is one of the best animated musicals of all time. A direct-to-DVD Barbie movie did not need to go this hard on the music, but guess what? They did. And the opening number, Free especially, carries the entire weight of the movie on its shoulders. A musical theater opening number needs to reveal the world, the characters, the conflict, get the audience to suspend their disbelief and convince us to care. If the opening number fails, the audience is going to be checked out, and after that, it's nearly impossible to win them back over. Getting the audience to suspend their disbelief is hard enough in the most ideal circumstance. So imagine the uphill battle that the songwriters had to go through for a movie that looks like this. I'm sorry, but it does look like this. They had to fight so the audience would look past appearances and let themselves be moved by this heartfelt, authentic story. But how did they do it? What secret songwriting techniques are used to make Free a masterpiece? Good day, everybody. It is Calxiyn here, ready to nerd out on Calxiyn Cares Too Much about something I am gonna make you care about, because there are so many cool things to talk about when it comes to the instrumentation, the meter, rhyme structure, lyrical meaning, characterization, and we are going to do that phrase by phrase. If you want to be a songwriter, a storyteller of any kind, or you're an audience member curious about how music can guide your emotions and make you feel, I promise you're gonna learn a lot, because there is so much cool stuff in this song and I can't wait to talk about it. Before anyone even starts to sing, the instrumental is immediately going to capture the audience's attention, because before we see how Annalise feels about the long list of duties from the royal scheduler, we hear the hustle and bustle in the instrumentation. There's a thump thump, thump thump, thump thump, thump thump, and it's almost like a heart beating.
After that, we have to rush, and I mean rush, to the Horticultural Society tea. And then there's your math lessons, your geography lessons, your science lessons.
This helps the audience intuitively feel Annalise's nervousness and showcases how quickly things are becoming overwhelming for her. But when Annalise starts to sing, the thumping pulls back until she starts to talk about her dreams and her heart starts racing again. So she calms down, she's able to control it and regain control of the situation, but then she gets excited when she thinks about her dreams and what she would rather be doing. There's no official sheet music for this song, but people have arranged it in 2/4 time. And I'm not gonna bore you with a bunch of music theory, but all you need to know is that 2/4 time is used a lot in polkas or folk songs, and that's because it has a driving sense of urgency. When Annalise starts to sing here, she has some brass coming in, and there's a woodwind instrument. Now, this woodwind instrument comes back multiple times, and I think it's to represent when the girls are dreaming. It's their imagination taking flight. And another trick here is that all of this is used to drown out the royal scheduler. We can't hear him anymore, but he's still going on. He's still talking. This way we know that Annalise has had enough. She doesn't want to hear about it anymore. And then that's intertwined with the feelings about flying away. This woodwind instrument sounds a lot like a bird, and that's mentioned throughout the song. Annalise's verse here is characterized by the harpsichord, which is a very royal instrument, and that follows her melody line, while the piano and the violin create the accompaniment. You really have to pay attention for this one, but the woodwind instrument comes back when Annalise sings, "Stay, that would be the day," because it's to represent that she's dreaming, she wants to fly away. To talk about all this, what's important about this exposition is that it tells us how intelligent Annalise is. She has a speech at the Historical Society, Horticultural Society tea, which is the science of gardening and using plants to improve human life. She has science lessons, geography lessons, math lessons, and if you've seen my analysis on the whole movie, you know that it's very important that they establish Annalise's intelligence in these sections, because it's ultimately her intelligence that saves the day. The dialogue combined with the instrumental is very important because subconsciously, the audience is going to start to feel overwhelmed, both in the music, but also in this giant list of things to do. Even if you're not the one who has to do it, if you've ever heard a conversation of, say, you're at a mall or something like that, like you're in a store, and there's a manager telling, okay, well, now you have to do this and this and this, you're like, oh my God, right? Even if it's not you, you suddenly feel overwhelmed just by hearing a list like this. And so I feel like that's really, really smart. But good instrumentation can't save bad lyrics. So how do Annalise's lyrics get us invested? In terms of structure, this verse is absolutely perfect when matched with Erica's. And something really important in songwriting is the concept of content dictates form and form follows function. But what does that mean? It basically means if you are going to have two sections of the song that are the same, like a verse, your two verses should match each other. Otherwise, it's not a verse anymore, it's a chorus. And so you can only choose one or the other. You have to either make it the same or make it radically different, so it's a pre-chorus, a chorus, or a bridge instead. And in this case, because Erica needs a verse, her verse needs to match Annalise's verse. For example, imagine if instead of, "and no debt to pay," Erica instead went, "and my parents wouldn't have left me behind any debt to pay," or something ridiculous like that. Like, that would be terrible. The reason why it sounds so good is because both verses have the same tight structure and they mirror each other. This line of "no debt to pay" is the exact same as "that would be the day." But even just looking at Annalise's structure in a vacuum, we have a very tight 8-7-13, 8-7-13, 5. And something really smart about the structure here is that they made the part that is supposed to be more overwhelming longer. Like Annalise listing no one to say when to eat or read or leave or stay. Think about how much that is versus the simple "that would be the day." Imagine if instead Annalise just sung, "and no one to tell me what to say." That would be the day, right? That doesn't have the same impact. The little trick here is contrasting simplicity with something more complicated in order to convey the emotion. The phrase which highlights the ideal is short, sweet, and simple. The phrase that highlights the conflict is long, and there's this whole list. It feels overwhelming. The burden is long. It just keeps going, just like the giant list that the Royal Scheduler had. And when it comes to the flow of the words here, we have so much to unpack and it makes me so excited. We have "all my life," "always," and that's really nice. We have "one," "once," "day," "do," which feel especially connected. "One day," "to once do," whatever I want. We also have "nothing," "nowhere," "need," "no," which again all feel very connected. Lessons, lords, lunches, lists, that's fantastic. Alliteration like this is another easy trick to make things feel melodic but not lose the element of natural, authentic speech, because it's still a song, but we don't want cat in the hat and the rat and all of that stuff, right? So this can make it feel melodic without compromising the authenticity of how Annalise is speaking, because you'll notice that the lyrics feel like something that someone would actually say. They just happen to rhyme. Speaking of rhyming, when it comes to rhymes, we have "me" and "be," which I know that that's not the most groundbreaking lyric ever, but to me it has a strong narrative function. It's everything that Annalise has to do and be, the person that she is forced to be, that prevents her from having a day for herself, or for me, as she says. And I also love "way," "say," "stay," and "day," and then "leave" and "read" have a little front end thing going on, though it's not a perfect rhyme. It's kind of like alliteration light. That's usually what I call it. It's like, oh, the first half, that's interesting. It's not a full rhyme, but it's again just for some flow. The flow being like this allows for the audience to clearly understand what's going on. And without the prerequisite of clarity, you can't get emotionally invested. So the first thing that happens is that now everything is extremely clear. That means that you can relax. You don't have to worry about understanding. Sometimes that happens in a live theater setting, especially with singers that have poor diction and other things like that. You're like, what? What's going on? What do they say? I don't understand. I'm so lost. And then you can't let yourself feel anything because you're so confused about trying to process and understand what is being sung. So the clarity, crystal clear, we got that out of the way. So now you're able to lock in. You're able to get emotionally invested. And something else that a little bit of predictability does is that it gives the audience a little dopamine hit when they get something right. That's what I was taught in school, that when the audience can predict a little bit, like say in The Little Mermaid, for example, you have neat, right? Look at this stuff, isn't it neat? And then as the song keeps going, you're like, she's gonna say feet, isn't she? I'm so smart. And the audience gets a little dopamine hit. They feel so proud of themselves. They can pat themselves on the back. And it's not predictable in a bad way. It's just that there's comfort and familiarity in knowing where we're going. And all songs need to be what? Surprising yet inevitable. Catchy and familiar and nostalgic, but also different. When it comes to lyrical meaning, I have covered some terrible songs, okay? Terrible, vague, horrible songs, but this song makes me so happy because we immediately know what Annalise wants. There's no vagueness, there's no beating around the bush. She just said it. She wants a day for herself right there. And then that begs the question, why? Why can't she have one? And a good song will make you keep asking questions, because if the conflict was resolved just by saying this, the song would stop. All my life I always wanted to have one day just for me. Oh, song's over, that's it. But no, it's the conflict of why. Why can't we have that? That keeps the song going. And that's immediately answered by listing the things that are in Annalise's way. The lessons, the lords, the lunches, the to-do list. And the way they did this is very, very smart, because we can all relate to this, whether we're 5 or 50 or 500 if you're free written, right? She has this yearning. We've all felt this yearning before. This is targeted to all the people that are my age or a little bit younger, but in high school, did you dream about, when I go off to college or when I enter the workforce or when I enter trade school, whatever you were going on to do, when I get out of high school, the dream life, that's gonna be my time when I get out of here. That's gonna be when I shine, right? And then you get to college or wherever you went and it's the exact same thing over again. Like, we've all felt that feeling. We've all felt that feeling of we want to get past this stressful point in our lives and there's something that we truly want to do. We just want to get through this so we can do the good thing, the fun thing, the thing that we were supposed to do or the thing that we're passionate about doing. We've all felt that before, I think. And so not only is everything perfect on a technical level, but it immediately resonates with us, which is so important. You're like, yeah, girl, I feel you, right? And that's why there are so many comments underneath Free saying, I sing this while I drive to work. I listen to this as I get ready to go to school, because it immediately makes you feel something. We all understand this feeling. The other secret trick that they use here is all of the songwriter legends will tell you that you put the most important information at the beginning and then at the end, because that way people will remember it. Psychologically, we tend to remember the first things in the list or the last things in the list, and that's what allows us to have memory recall, to recall the things in the middle. So if you come out strong, all my life I always wanted to have one day just for me, and how powerful that is, and then if you end with, that would be the day, that would be the day that I'm finally happy, right? Those are things that we are going to remember, and so it's easier for us to remember the content of the middle as well. But we're still very early into the song. There have been songs with more production budget than this song that have failed by the second verse, that have totally tanked. They have an amazing first verse, and then everything goes downhill. So how does Erica's verse hold up? As we go into Erica's verse, you'll notice in the instrumental that high-pitched instrument, to the oboe of fate, if we're gonna call it that, right? It flies toward Erica, and that transitions us very nicely into her section. And you'll also notice that the thump thump, thump thump is not actually here, and can you guess why? It's so genius, and I think it's because Madame Carp isn't here. Annalise has the royal scheduler rattling off all these things that she has to do, but by contrast, Erica is actually in her element right now. Yes, she has a lot of work to do, but Madame Carp isn't breathing down her neck. She's singing, she's able to have her own little cabaret show, as they mentioned in the talking section, and so I think that she's actually at peace. And this is showcased by the flute instrument on her melody line and the strumming of the strings in the accompaniment, how it's not as heavy anymore. And we know because of the lack of harpsichord that Erica is not royal, since that is Annalise's royal instrument. The flute has a very humble or folky sound to it, and so it totally makes sense that that would take Erica's melody line instead. Just like Annalise on Crochet and No Debt to Pay, I believe the oboe of fate is returning. It's possible that what I think is the flute on Erica's melody line is still the oboe. Like, it's possible that they're one and the same, but in that case, I would argue why the reason why the oboe of fate is constantly on Erica is because Erica is what is going to fundamentally change Annalise's life forever. It's not just Annalise going into the town, it's Annalise meeting Erica specifically, and so I think that this still works. It's their fates are intertwined, but it's specifically Erica and Erica's song and Erica's singing, which is going to cause the change in trajectory. It's Erica singing her mother's song in town, which changes everything. So this to me still makes sense. And all of this is absolutely fantastic because the instrumental here allows contrast to be created between Annalise and Erica while still living in that same structure. We talked about how important the structure is. The differences in the instrumental make it surprising yet familiar. The structure is the same, it's still catchy, but a trick that songwriters will use is associating different instruments to different characters, which also gives the instrumental depth and guide the audience towards specific conclusions about class, personality, whether the character's a hero or the villain. And so that's another trick. It's not just to make the instrumental sound better, which of course it does, but it's also to introduce who a character is before we even get to know them, before they even say anything. In terms of structure, as I said, the verses are perfect, but there's another important reason why. Sometimes in duets, there will be differences. For example, they'll live in the same structure, but the rhymes will be in a different place. My Goodbye from Epic the Musical does that, where Athena and Odysseus, they both have the same structure, the same syllable count per line and things like that, but the rhymes are in different spots. And so that is an option, but the reason why they didn't do that here is because we need to establish very quickly that Annalise and Erica are actually the same. They're going through the same struggle. So when you want characters to have opposition, when you want characters to fight with each other, like Epic and like My Goodbye, having a similar meter structure but different rhymes or different choices, it differentiates the characters and it makes them feel in conflict with each other. But if the characters are united, if the characters are supposed to be the same, the structure should be united as well, and that's what they do here. Musically, their vocal lines are in sync with each other, even though they're not singing together, and that tells us these girls are the same. They share something. They're unified in how they feel. Now, for the alliteration, we have so many fun sounds here, and it makes me so happy because another trap that a lot of songs fall into is that the first verse will have a lot of clever things going on, a lot of clever alliteration with the flow, and then the second verse will entirely drop it. And it's like, what happened? And like, technically, it still rhymes and the structure's the same, but the alliteration is still important for the flow. In order to maintain the same flow, we also need to give Erica the same amount of fun alliteration, and this song does that, and that's why I'm so happy, right? Wanted, waking, work, with, wedding, and again, the alliteration also helps to make things clear. Think about it. If you're a really little kid, do you know what crochet means? You might, right? Especially if you have family that sews. I know personally, my grandmother knew how to sew and knit and crochet and all of that fun stuff because they came from a generation of immigrants where you came here and you had to fix your own clothes. You just couldn't go out and buy new ones every time that something, you know, broke or tore or whatever. You had to fix them, right? And so I know what it means, but does every kid know what crochet means? Especially now that sewing isn't necessarily as common anymore. It's more of a hobby instead of a necessity. We don't really fix our own clothes anymore. And so do kids know what these words mean? Or even stitches? Would they know what a stitch is in terms of sewing? I don't know, but if I'm 5, we understand what work means because our parents go to work, and we understand what a wedding is or a wedding dress is, and so we know at least through the clarity of the alliteration and all of that stuff that Erica cannot have the day for herself that she wants because she has piles of work, and part of that work is the wedding dress that she's sewing for Annalise's wedding, which is super important to get across. Like, is that not crazy? She is making the dress that Annalise is gonna get married in. You know, it's too bad that Erica wasn't actually at the dress fitting. I'm assuming that she just sent it out and she's like, oh, I finally got that done, right? And so she's talking in the past tense because obviously we see Annalise trying on a dress, but maybe that's just a trial dress. The real one is at Erica's shop. But if I was like rewriting Barbie Princess and the Pauper, I don't know, maybe I would have a scene where Erica like takes the wedding dress with her and then complains afterward, but because Annalise is singing, she doesn't notice her to have them both on stage at the same. Anyway, that was totally unrelated. But we have piles in need of pressing, no, need, which are great for the flow as well. And I think, again, we understand what no means, even for a young audience, even for a child. No is like frustration. We don't want to do it. And with the visuals of the movie, that helps. But for a musical theater song, you can't rely on the visuals because people are going to be listening to it, right? And so even while listening, you are able to understand. When it comes to the rhymes, they are all in the same place, which is fantastic. And then we have the difference of myself and shelf. And that's harsher than me in B, which is very appropriate because Erica is, again, frustrated while Annalise is longing. And then similar to read and leave, we have something very fun with gown, thown, in 1,000, right? With, stitch, crochet, pay, and disarray. That's insane! The fact that they worked crochet in here somehow, I was like, no, that doesn't rhyme. I think it almost rhymes. No, it just perfectly rhymes. It's a perfect rhyme. That's crazy. They're mind. And more importantly, it matches Annalise, which I think is really good. Like with myself, shelf, me, B, that establishes their differences because Erica needs to work while Annalise is daydreaming. And so that's a good chunk to, again, keep the rhymes in the same place, but actually change the rhyme that it is. But the orange rhymes all match because despite their differences, they share something in common, and that is wanting something more than this. This is going to be really important for something that I tell you guys later, so really pay attention. But when you think about it, it's not the lessons, the lords, or the lunches that Annalise is struggling with. It's that she's being told what to do. She has no control over it. Even though she's going to be a ruler, she's already a ruler, or she will be the future ruler, she's not treated like a ruler, she's treated like a child. Similarly for Erica, it's not even the work. It's not the fact that she has to work. It's that the amount of work that she has to do is unreasonable for one person to complete, and then also she can't complete it in peace the way she wants to, and we're going to see that coming up next in the talking section. So put a pin in that, but when it comes to the lyrical meaning, we know immediately what Erica wants and what is in her way. And since Erica doesn't have the royal responsibilities, we need to establish that to the audience. Like, what's this girl's problem, right? She's not a princess, so what's her problem? And so we understand that it's the indentured servitude. We understand that Erica is a seamstress and she's in debt. And this subscribes to the rule I was mentioning earlier, where the most important part is at the beginning and at the end. Bookmarks, so we are able to remember the middle sections. And similar to before, this is relatable. You probably sing this while you're doing laundry or the dishes or mopping or vacuuming and you put it on blast, right? There's a current trend happening that really concerns me where executives or even the songwriters themselves, they think that musical theater songs must be vague in order to be relatable. That's what the people want now, that it can't be too specific to the story or else people won't understand. And we're starting to see that with things like Disney's Wish. But what we're losing and what I want to impart to the next generation of songwriters that are all right here, right, is that the best songwriters will write a song that has specificity in terms of story, but invokes an emotion that everybody can relate to. That's why Let It Go became so popular. That's a very story-specific song, but it has the emotional catharsis of being yourself, letting it all go, being the person that you were meant to be, ignoring other people's opinions about you. That is something that everyone can relate to. It doesn't need to be dresses for us to understand the feeling of work just piling onto Erica and she can't catch up. I want to do a little experiment in the comments, so if you've gotten this far without hearing what I'm about to say whether or not you relate to Annalise or Erica more, and I'll give you a second to do it. But I think that the people that resonate with Annalise more are probably people that had to deal with keeping up appearances or had a lot to do in terms of extracurriculars or lessons. Not necessarily like physical work, but more academic obligations. You were on debate club, you had piano lessons, you were doing the violin, but you also had to be on honor roll, right? Especially for people that are studying something that they're not interested in, and you think that it's your family duty, and maybe you're like me and also descended from people that very recently immigrated here to a new country for their kids to have a better life, maybe. all right? If you relate to Annalise more, you have that obligation. You went into a profession that you don't actually like because that was your duty. But Erica will resonate with us too, especially those of us who now are past college or maybe still in college, but also have another job, the 9-to-5, a terrible boss. But I think that when this movie came out, Erica probably resonated with the parents. The window to capture your audience's attention is very small, and I can imagine right now, a parent is doing the dishes and they put on this movie for their child that they think is gonna be kind of a dumb kids movie, right? It's a direct-to-DVD movie, it's not Disney. But then they're like, okay, they're doing their dishes and they stop and they're like, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? This is not just a kids movie. Like, there's an indentured servant and then they are seated. I think by now the audience should be locked in and it has our attention. But a song can still lose our attention, and especially with a talking part coming up, how does the song keep us engaged? During the talking section with Madame Carp, the thumping from Annalise's section has come back. Why? Because there's an actual confrontation going on, and even the violins feel heavier. And it's difficult to hear, but I found a little musical secret to share with you guys in here too. You can actually hear the I am a girl like you leitmotif happening, and how cool is that? It's the you'd never think that it was so, and it repeats twice. At first it's just you'd never think, and then it kind of cuts off. But then it does the full thing. You'd never think that it was so. And the oboe takes this, which is foreshadowing how their fates are going to intertwine. You would never think that it was so, but even right now, these girls are going through the same thing and they are going to meet. And it's such a nice little musical secret in there in order to reinforce that foreshadowing. And right before we get into the chorus, there's this rumbling or something, which showcases how Erica feels frustrated and angry at being treated unfairly. But that's the instrumentation, and even though it's really good, we have to talk about the dialogue in the speaking section, which is also really good. Spoiler alert, no, I wasn't gonna say that this dialogue was bad. Is that where you guys thought that this was going? That the talking section is bad? No, it's fantastic. It makes sense that the singing has stopped because Madame Carp can hear Erica in universe. That's what what do you think I'm running here? A cabaret, right? That's what that line eats, by the way. It's such a good line. But that's what that line means. It means that Madame Carp heard Erica singing. And so logically to me, it doesn't make any sense that Madame Carp would join in and sing along. The fact that the singing has stopped is actually a representation of how Madame Carp is taking Erica's freedom away. Erica's already in indentured servitude and she can't even sing while she's working, right? This woman wants to make her miserable. And that's what the talking section represents. The break from the freedom, the break from being able to freely dream. Especially for Erica, singing is a representation of freedom. So it makes sense that this is all talking. And I think it's hilarious. This dialogue is great. Like the cabaret, that's gold. Oh my God, that's so amazing. And then also Erica's sass, like saying, oh, I would have said a debtor's prison. Like her sarcasm. Oh my God. Madame Carp's shop is the debtor's prison. And that's crazy. And to me, it's like insane that they allowed Erica to say that because that's such poignant commentary about class and all the other things that the movie is about. So I'm like, oh my God. Like, go off, girl. It makes us root for her, right? And the other important thing that this does is it naturally establishes that Erica has paid off more than half. And let's say, I talked about this in the Barbie video and I was really confused about the math, but let's say that Erica's 18, right? And she's been working, let's say since she was 12. Child labor, sure. So she's paid off more than half in 6 years, let's pretend. But she has 37 years to go. Like, that math is not mathing. There's no world where 37 years is appropriate. And so we immediately understand this is unfair. What the hell? And then we find out, which is the craziest line, Erica's parents borrowed the money so they can feed her because there's clearly a poverty crisis in this kingdom. And then Madame Carp is like their mistake, right? Which is just crazy. So now you're pissed, right? I can imagine again, like I said, if the parents weren't sitting down, they're like, wait a second, what is happening here? This is not just like a fluffy kids movie. There's something serious happening. What kind of society is this? And now we have more reason to root for Erica. Now we're moving on to the chorus, and in the chorus instrumental, it has a very Beauty and the Beast type sound, don't you think? Where it's just like the violins are swelling in this way where it feels like that I want adventure in the great wide somewhere. And there is still a flute going on Erica and Annalise's melody line. I think you can still hear the flute on the What Would It Be Like to Be. It's a little harder to hear for Annalise because things are really ramping up and there's the violins and everything and some brass and all of that stuff. But as we sing Free, I think the woodwinds are still there to symbolize that Erica and Annalise are united. They're united by their dreams and they're also unified in this royal brass build sound. There's some cymbals and then we see how the music transforms. These are high, bright instruments that are taking the melody line, and that's supposed to represent how dreamy it is. You even have a glockenspiel doing like little dings. And the strums of the harp occasionally. You can still hear the strings, but they're less heavy and like violent, so we can focus on that dream-like instrumental in the chorus. And the trumpets come back after Annalise's Marry Whom I Choose to bring us back to reality. And all of this creates excellent contrast between the verses and the chorus. The verse is about life as it is, so it's heavier, but this is about what they would do if they were free, if they could fly away, so it's floaty and dreamlike. And the structure of this is all very nice. There is a weird sort of 7/6 situation happening here, but I think that Marry and Whom are elongated just a little bit, so the bar all measures itself out, right? Everything irons itself out in the end, so if it was too jarring, I would complain about it, but it actually ends up being very smooth, so I think that the minor inconsistency here is fine. And we still have some nice alliteration. We have what and would back to back, and then we have free, fly, and that's especially great too because fly is going to come back later in the bridge. They both want to fly away. So it's good that we're reinforcing these words now, that freedom and being able to fly away is connected to freedom. So I am actually shocked here, but this rhyming section does have something I would usually complain about, but I'm not going to, and here's why. So usually it's kind of a crime to have sing and things because it's not a perfect rhyme anymore because of the stress on the S. It's too much, right? If it was sing and thing, that'd be fine, or sing and ring and all of those other things, but sing and things, usually you would have to choose, do you want it to be sings and things, or do you want it to be thing and sing? However, the reason why this doesn't personally bother me is because we already have a perfect rhyme right here. We have the try and fly, and so are IOUs and choose. And so that's why I think it's acceptable. The other reason is because there's not really any way to fix this, right? You can't say free to try a crazy thing, right? Unless you change this entire lyric, it's not like there's an easy fix. The reason why I've complained about it in other songs, like famously Has Been Hotel with the purports and support and that having a inconsistent stress at the end, the reason why I complained about that is because it was really easy for me to go in and just fix the tense and then have it be purport and support and have it be perfect, especially in order to make the structure consistent. But making this thing that doesn't make any sense, that would be very unnatural. And so in this case, it's more important to be true to how people actually speak than bend over backwards to try to make it a perfect rhyme. The only reason I complain other times in other songs is because it's really easy to fix it. And also that's not an intentional choice they're making. Like that structure doesn't track the same. It's just a mistake that they made. In terms of the actual lyrical meaning, you may not think that a lot is going on here, but there's actually something very interesting happening. And it's actually with the contrast between what Annalise is saying compared to Erica. Annalise wants to try crazy things that probably aren't becoming of a princess, whereas Erica wants to be free from her debt so she can travel the world and sing. Free to sing. What they're actually doing here is showing us contrast between Annalise and Erica's personalities. Annalise is more romantic or prone to fantasizing, you could say, whereas Erica is practical. Erica has her 5-year plan. Like, Annalise does know that she would choose to marry Julian. Like, that's a choice that she would make. But she doesn't actually know what crazy things are, right? Because she doesn't know anything beyond her royal life, and so it's very vague. I would do crazy things, but like what? We don't know. And usually in another song, I would complain about that for being vague. But the vagueness is actually an important point of characterization, because Annalise is just dreaming. She wants something different, but she doesn't really know what yet. Whereas Erica, she is locked in. She has her 5-year plan. She's gonna go on tour. She has her whole life planned out. And this is really excellent because even though they're singing about the same thing, we're able to see the effort the songwriters put into making sure that the way that they were characterized, their personalities are very different. And this gives more depth to the characters. So we have another talking section here. And even though it's similar to what happened with Madame Carp and Erica, the conversation that Annalise has with her mom is still distinct, even musically distinct. We have the thumping coming back, and the violins are still heavy, but it's a little less so. It doesn't sound as violent, I guess you could say, or volatile. There's some resignation in it, especially with when the leitmotif comes back, the you'd never think that it was so leitmotif that I talked about earlier. Listen right here. It just sounds a bit more resigned compared to how clearly I could hear Erica's. There's something, again, that's pulled back in this, a little bit of sorrow, right? Because the queen is sorry, and it's important to establish that, the relationship between Annalise and her mother. It's not that her mother is cruel and forcing her into marriage, like they have to do this. She's sorry about the situation, and that's important for the queen's character because we need to showcase, hey, the queen isn't the villain here. She's just kind of doing what she has to do. And this is also an important moment for Annalise's characterization because the conversation between Erica and Madame Carp was very snarky. But that's not how Annalise acts because she's trying to remain composed and understanding, and her mother's even trying to cheer her up like, oh look, another gift. And then before she starts to sing again, we hear that royal sound, the rumble, and then the strum of the harp going upwards. And that's almost like Annalise tossing the gift away. She hasn't actually pulled on the string yet, but I think that that's what the harp represents. It's almost like an internal eye roll. She can't roll her eyes to her mother, the queen, but at the same time, she's like, this isn't really cheering me up, Mom. The structure of the spoken interlude does mirror Erica, but the actual content is contrasting to show how Erica and Annalise are still different. When we return to Annalise's mini verse, she has her harpsichord. What's really interesting and exciting is that when Erica starts to sing her mini verse, the harpsichord stays and combines with the flute, and this could be foreshadowing the fact that Erica will one day be royal like Annalise. But similar to how our oboe of fate stayed on Erica the entire time during her verse because she is going to be the inciting incident in terms of changing the course of Annalise's life, I think that the reason why the harpsichord stays on Erica is because Annalise is going to be what frees Erica from her debt. It's everything that Erica sacrificed in order to help Annalise and save Annalise that Annalise is able to go out and put Madame Carp out of business, right? And so I think that's a really nice detail. Even though the harpsichord comes with us into Erica's verse, what's interesting is that the flute doesn't start until we get back to Erica. And I think that the reason why is because Annalise is not dreaming anymore. She is looking at the reality of her situation. So there is no oboe, there is no dreams or any of that. But then when we get back to Erica, not only does she have the harpsichord, but the flute comes back in because Erica is still dreaming. She is still persevering. Whereas Annalise is kind of like, this sucks, right? And so before we were on the same page with the verses, but now what's cool to see is that with these mini verses, they're actually changing it up a little bit to keep that surprising yet inevitable feeling. Annalise thinks that she is doomed, and we see that going into the chorus again, but Erica thinks that her life is just beginning. And as you can see in the slides, the structure matches the verse territory that previously we were in. However, now it's just a little bit shorter because we don't need an entire verse again. We only need a couple lines to get us back into the chorus. So again, something familiar, but it's still not the same. We don't have too much alliteration, but there is some interesting stuff going on with lucky, every, many, right? Just because it has that ending Y sound. But we also have though, no, right, for the O sound. And then more apparent, we have little, lucky, strings, song. And what I really like about this is that the alliteration is not as self-contained as it was in the verses previously. Some of it's together, like lucky, and then also little, and strings, and song. And so that's really nice. The fact that they're starting to join together, even though they haven't actually sung together yet for an extended period of time. In terms of rhyming, things, strings, strong, and song, and then also along, they're all really clean. And I like the alliteration of that too, because things, strings, like that's very frivolous, right? But strong and song are, well, strong. And then we have a little wholesome moment with Birdie asking, like, hey, don't forget about me, can I come with you, right? And I think that this is cute because it's not only that Birdie's trying to encourage Erica, like, okay, if you're singing, I'll sing along with you, even if I'm not a singer, like it's about morale, right? It's boosting the mood in the dress shop. But the other thing that this does is that it establishes that Birdie is also in servitude. She's asking, like, hey, Erica, when you get out of here, can I go with you? We may have thought, oh, Erica's in indentured servitude, but Birdie just works there. No. This line very subtly establishes the fact that Birdie also cannot move about of her own free will either, and this also makes us think, hey, wait a minute, they're both indentured servants? Does anybody, like, actually work here? Does anybody choose to work here? And it starts to plant the idea that there are more systemic issues of class and poverty and everything else that the movie focuses on, which is fantastic. In terms of lyrical meaning, I love how Annalise is talking about how the gifts are at the price of her freedom, and that's such a good lyric to help push the themes of the movie, which, again, I talk about in my Barbie Princess and the Pauper video, but it's about materialism. The Prince and the Pauper, materialism is a very important theme in the original story, so when you're doing an adaptation, you need to make sure that you keep some of the same morals and some of the same themes that the original story touched on. And so this is telling the audience, Annalise is telling the kids, again in the audience, right, that material objects do not make up for a lack of autonomy. It's almost like saying money can buy security but not happiness, and actually explaining why. It's a lyric a lot of us will look back on as adults and realize that there was a lot of depth for a kids movie, right? A direct-to-DVD kids movie. There is a cost. She must sacrifice in order to save her people. And this is nothing against Dominic, because, like, this is just whatever, how the world works, and she doesn't know anything about him, right? But from my perspective, if I was performing this, right? From my perspective, I would think, like, Dominic is not just going to help them out of the goodness of his heart. He needs to get something out of it. Not even, like, because he's a malicious person, but, like, that's just how agreements and trade work. We can't just bail out, like, they can't just bail out this other kingdom and no benefit to them, when for all we know, Dominic's kingdom might be having, you know, their own problems too. They can't just give the money away for nothing. There needs to be a political reason. And that's what's really fantastic about Annalise's line here. You can't get something for nothing. And so we're trying to show the audience what the something is, what the price is, what the sacrifice is. And what's also amazing is that Annalise is talking about having an abundance of things, but then Erica comes in and says that she has little, that she is poor, but she has important values like strong determination. And so that's just a really nice contrast. We also have some more clarity about her dream right here. And I think that it's not just about singing, right? It's not just about traveling the world to sing. It's people will gather around the world to see her. And so she won't be insignificant or ignored like Madame Carp makes her feel. She won't be small anymore. She will be heard and important. And these are definitely some of the best lyrics in the entire song because it reinforces the differences in their class, but also it subtly imparts the moral lessons on us. And also that they're not so different either, even though there are differences between them. Clearly, they both value the same things. Now, going into the instrumental of this coarse bridge hybrid sort of situation, the instruments are mostly the same and serve the same functions. Again, familiarity. But there are some differences. Like the drum doesn't just do that rumble, right? It pounds repeatedly a couple times instead of just being one rumble and we're done. And the brass is especially loud here, which signals to us, like, this is gonna be different. This is bigger and more dramatic than the last time that you heard it. We hear the cymbals again, but then as we get into the actual bridge, the violins feel very sad, like we could literally be stepping off the balcony and either fly or float. You get that feeling of suspense. You don't know what the girls will choose, and there's this sadness and yearning and longing and uncertainty. And there are a couple strums of the harp in here, and I think that's to represent the push and pull. I feel like they're being pulled in both directions, right? And that's part of the representation of this, that there's a fairy tale, there's taking flight, and the flute is here the whole time, which, again, it's a little hard to hear, but you can especially hear it on 1,000 miles away, and my conscience tells me stay. Because we have a soft fantasy, but the other instruments are kind of like, I don't want to say fighting for your attention, because usually that's a negative thing, but I think that it works here, right? Because you have the harp, and it's sort of like, no, come to me, fly away with me. But then you have the violins, like the violins are like, know your place, girl, you gotta stay where you are, right? And so there's sort of the difference in that, in the push and pull, and then we return to the trumpets and the drums again, which is away from the soft fantasy. We are pulling out the rug. In terms of the structure, we're all good here, because this is a new section, but this matches this from before, which is great. And there's a lot of nice alliteration things too, like fear I'll never be, will forever be. Like you can hear how it's complementary, but also has such a great contrast with each other. In the bridge, we have feel myself fly, but we also have something interesting because we have the I, fly, and then my, like in miles, right? And so that creates nice flow without being, again, too rhymey. And then we have close, conscience, could, and would, take, tells. In terms of rhyme, away and stay are especially powerful because they match each other, yet they create contrast. Again, wanting to fly away, but being forced to stay. Away is elevated, stay is grounded. And then we also have flight and right as a little internal rhyme situation, and that's very crisp. It makes us understand that taking flight would not be right, and that diction helps to reinforce that. And we also have me and be again as like a little internal rhyme before like these last lines end up wrapping up. And I think that that's really good because we have heard this throughout the song, but like this is the decision. They're actually deciding to stay. There's no imagining about it like all my life I wanted this. Could I still have that? No, this is the actual decision now. This is how reality is. We have a callback to how we wish things could have been, but what reality is actually like. And obviously they use this earlier too, right? With be and free. And so all these words, me, be, and free, it's really nice how they keep coming back because they're all connected to each other. In terms of the lyrical meaning, this is especially powerful because this is the first time where Erica and Annalise sing in unison for an extended period of time. Now they're actually singing together. They both want to run away, but they struggle with their conscience because they have such strong moral character. Even though they're in completely different situations, they agree on this. This bridge is emotionally moving because we have the melancholy and the yearning and the suspense. But the other thing that I think is key to this being such a good bridge is that it's a subversion of what we expect. Usually in the I Want song, we have that big, powerful, like Quasimodo, right? Deciding to go out there. Hercules deciding deciding to go the distance. This is an I want song and opening song sort of hybrid, but usually the heroes don't give up on their dreams, and they're not, right? Because that's the lyrics that we're getting to next. But when you look at this, the other reason why the bridge is so surprising is because we don't really think that they're gonna stay. Like, there's nothing to necessarily indicate other than Annalise saying, I know it's my duty, as like one, short line. There's nothing that really says to us throughout this entire song that they are going to choose to stay there. They're so unhappy with their lives. Why would they choose to stay, right? And so something else that's important when we talk about, again, you guys are gonna get sick of me, songs should be surprising yet familiar. Another way to do that is when it's appropriate, right? Don't do a twist for the sake of a twist, but there is kind of a twist here, right? Because standard fare is like, and I'm leaving, I have decided to go and live my dreams, right? That's usually what would happen here, but no, instead, they are choosing to stay. But still, there's empowerment in both girls at least having the choice to follow through, even if they don't have the choice of what they're following through with. The reason why this kind of may seem sad, right? It ends on a sad note, yet it's still moving and empowering and all of those things, is because they do make a choice. It isn't just inaction. They made the choice to stay, and that's what gives them agency. It's not just like, oh well, too bad, I can't, because we really get annoyed as an audience when characters ask for too much pity. That's something that you'll find in really old songwriting books, is that a character should never give up, or why would the audience still root for them? It's like, oh well, they want to give up, so we want to give up too. Like, the characters should always fight. They shouldn't sit and wallow in their own pity. The audience is more likely to gravitate when the characters make a decision and a choice. And so the reason why this subverts the expectation really well, but then also still, again, has that power, is because they made the choice. They chose to follow through when they could have run away, and that's what the power is in. The power is in the fact that they chose to stay, even if they can't choose what they are staying for. So moving into the ending, we're still reusing parts that we've heard before in terms of the verses and the chorus, especially instrumentally, which I think is genius, because we hear that flute oboe thing on the melody line, and that was previously associated with just dreaming, but now everything's in here. The dreaming instruments are in here, but also the heavier instruments like the trumpets and the cymbals and the strings and the drums. Everything is together because the function of the verses was conflict, was hardship, and the function of the choruses was to talk about the dream world. But now we've come to a compromise. They're talking about reality, but how they will also never give up hope. So now, finally, for the big ending of the song, all of these elements combine together because, again, we've made a compromise. We've made a choice, and the choice is to kind of have a little bit of both, to acknowledge the conflict but never stop dreaming. It's just so smart, and I love it, but in terms of more specific things, we do have some horns on Royal, and then after Det, we drop the harpsichord, and I think we drop the flute. Like, I think now it's just the oboe, like now we just have the fate oboe, and then everything comes together, and even those instruments are doing the melody for threads and seams. In my dreams, I'll be free, and then we have our magical sound effect. As I said, the structure here is both surprising yet familiar. We've heard the same thing multiple times, and so we don't want the audience to get bored, and so now we're throwing in some surprises, we're changing stuff. They have earned the right to change up the verse and the chorus and make this ending, which is a nice modification of both of them. The alliteration is also great here with remain, royal, repay, regret, and like these are the things that lead to some regret. And then we have duty means doing, and that's a really nice, strong phrase that is going to stick in our heads. Stops, schemes, seams is also nice, and then gloves and gowns, of course. These are all things that help with the flow. In terms of rhyming, det and regret are insane. Schemes, seams, dreams, very nice. And in terms of the lyrical meaning, as I said before, now they are choosing to stay. Erica is gonna stay and pay her parents' debt, and then Annalise acknowledges that she will always be royal, no matter where she goes, and that duty means doing the things your heart may well regret. Like that line, oh my god, it gives me goosebumps every single time. It's just so good. Like, fuck, man, right? Like when we talk about relatability, especially, you know, listening to this song going through musical theater school, I used to listen to this song all the time. Like I would sing my heart out with these lyrics. We've all felt this way, but the reason why the song withstands the test of time is because they also phrase this in a way that feels empowering. It's not too woe is me and too melancholy. Yes, sometimes duty means doing the things your heart may well regret. But that doesn't mean we have to stop believing in our dreams. That doesn't mean that we have to stop the schemes, right? As Erica says, the schemes to get out of it. And obviously, I think her schemes are like singing on the street, her little side hustle, right? And I love that because Annalise will still dream and believe that there may be another way to save her people. And Erica will still fight against Madame Carp and find another way to pay off her debt. Not just, you know, working at the dress shop, but also going outside to sing. They are taking matters into their own hands. And the closing line of "there's more to living than gloves and gowns and threads and seams," it makes me so excited every single time. It's showcasing the difference in their class. For Annalise, it's wearing the gowns, right? Heavy is the head that must wear the crown, Shakespeare vibes. But for Erica, it's making the dresses. Oh my god, it makes me crazy. And in their dreams, they will be free from the oppression of the seams. What wearing the gown or making the gowns actually means. One day, they'll be free from all that, and it's so good! I've revealed so many secrets and songwriting tricks about this song, but before we get into the biggest, most important one, I just want to thank everybody on Patreon and also my YouTube membership members for supporting me. If you want me to be able to make more in-depth videos like this, while also getting rewards like early access, consider joining my wonderful patrons and YouTube membership members. But now, let us get into the big reveal. Now here's the most amazing thing that this song pulled off. Free isn't only a fun opening number that establishes the characters, the conflict, and the tone of the story. Like I said at the beginning of the video, every opening number should do that. But that's not all it does. It has a reoccurring leitmotif that foreshadows the future, like from I Am a Girl Like You, but it also establishes the theme and the moral of the story. For example, Hunchback of Notre Dame has "This is a tale of a man and a monster," and then Clopin asks, who is the monster and who is the man? And by the end of that movie, that transforms to what makes a monster and what makes a man. You may think that this song only establishes what the girls want to be free of and what they dream about doing if they were free, but it does have a question. There's more to living than gloves and gowns and threads and seams. And it begs the question of what? There's more to life than this, but what? And partially, this lines up with our themes about materialism and greed throughout the entire movie, but it's more than that. Remember that thing I told you to remember all the way back at the beginning of the video? Even though she's going to be a ruler, she's already a ruler, or she will be the future ruler, she's not treated like a ruler, she's treated like a child. The second important thing that this song does is set up for the revelation that their dream is not the only thing that they wanted. Annalise dreams about marrying who she wants, like choosing, being able to choose who she marries. And then Erica dreams about being able to travel the world and sing. But there's more to life than that. Annalise is able to choose who she wants to marry because she becomes a capable ruler who can handle their kingdom's issues without Dominic's money. And then Erica is able to choose to travel the world, but she discovers that it wasn't just about singing. It was the gift of sharing song with the people that you love and with the found family that she has and with the person that she falls in love with, which is why she returns. People will gather around the world to see her, and so she won't be insignificant or ignored like Madame Carp makes her feel. She won't be small anymore. She will be heard and important. There's a very short line that, if you aren't careful, can go unnoticed, where Erica says that her mother taught her "Written in Her Heart," like the song that she's singing when she's performing in town. Erica wanted to travel the world and sing, but she realized that singing isn't just about performance. It's about sharing love and understanding with another person. And that's why at the end of the movie, she comes back to be with Dominic, because when her and Dominic sing together, she's like, oh, I found that person who understands me. And I'd also argue that it's not really about performance for Erica. Performance was just one way to feel heard and important and valued, but her friendships with Annalise and Julian and Dominic also make her feel that way. And so she thought the answer was going to be in performing, but the answer was actually about friendship, something that outside of Birdie she has never really had. She's never had a group of friends who believed in her, or quite frankly, anyone who believed in her, given how Madame Carp degrades her. And so they go in looking for one thing, but then they come out finding something else. And so Written in Your Heart answers the thematic question that is pointed to in Free. Life is about finding the place where your heart belongs, coming into your own, that coming of age narrative, celebrating life with friends, love, courage, embracing your own special and unique gifts and talents. These are the things that will make you free. Freedom isn't just Annalise gets to marry Julian because Julian suddenly comes into a bunch of money. And even for Erica, being free is not, oh, well, you know, Madame Carp just let her go and let her go of her debt and now she's singing around the world. The true message of the movie is that it wasn't their dreams that made them free. It's that they didn't need to change who they were to be free. All they needed to do was fight to be their authentic selves. The quote on the movie is "live your dream," and you could say that this is also the thesis of the movie. It's the live part that's important. It's that both of the girls, they get what they wanted, but it's not getting what they wanted that changed them, right? If they just got what they wanted right now at the end of this song, they would be the same. They'd have what they wanted, but what they needed was friendship, especially for Erica, who is alone. And so what they did masterfully was having Free establish the dreams that they want, the dreams that they want to live in, but have the rest of the movie's themes be about what it takes to get there. It's not about just getting your dream, but to live it, you need to fight for it. And that's what There's More to Living is about. This song doesn't just set up foreshadowing for the rest of the movie. It also sets up the theme for the rest of the movie, that again, it's not just about getting your dream and just having that happen, but it's living, right? And living means having to fight for your dreams and fight for making them come true. And so I think that that's something amazing that they did. And so I hope this video helped you realize how genius this song is and how much work the songwriting team put into it. Again, for a direct-to-DVD movie, there are masterful lyrics, compelling instrumentation, and an authentic story that we are hooked on. And if you want to hear even more about the music of Barbie, Princess and the Pauper, make sure to take a look at my video about How Can I Refuse Preminger's Villain Song. Villain songs are very different from opening numbers and I Want songs, and so if you're a songwriter, again, storyteller, curious audience member, there is still a lot to learn. This has been Calxiyn caring way too much. I hope you care too now, and I will see you next time. Bye!